So thank you so much for joining me today, James. Could you start by introducing yourself?
Sure. So I'm James Eberhart, and I'm the Associate Director of Admissions here at Miss Hall School out in Western Massachusetts. And most of the students call me Mr. E, but I work here in admissions, and I live in the dorm, and I coach, and I used to be a teacher. So I've sort of seen it all here at Miss Hall's, and it's a great place to be.
Great. Could you tell us a little bit more about where Miss Halls is located and what the environment is like in the campus and its surrounding area?
Yeah, so we're out in the Berkshires, which is the farthest west in Massachusetts. We're closer to New York than most of the places you've probably heard of in Massachusetts, but we're about 2 hours away from Boston, about 2.5 hours away from New York City. So we're sort of centrally located in a place where all of the people from the cities come for their outdoor and sort of cultural excitement. So we've got tons of really exciting restaurants. We've got hiking and biking and all sorts of outdoorsy stuff. The Appalachian Trail runs right through our town, and the highest mountain in the state is about 10 minutes up the road. We're surrounded by some of the greatest liberal arts colleges in the country, and got about 17 or 18 different museums and art galleries and ski mountains. And it's just a very sort of high culture, high outdoorsy area. Most of the people who live here are, sort of either very young families or sort of older retired people from the cities. And so they want to make sure they have access to, art and culture and good food and, exciting shopping and all sorts of great stuff, without all of the sort of hustle and bustle and tense energy that you find in cities. So it's sort of a nice mix, and it's really a beautiful place to be.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think most people wouldn't necessarily associate access to high culture being, 2 hour drive from both Boston and New York. But it's
Yeah,
great that you have to sacrifice those things and you still get
exactly.
access to the beautiful outdoors. So, how does the location impact students' experience on campus?
Yeah, I think that there's sort of two ways, and I think one way is just being here in this world. It has a lot to do with what our weekends look like and what our sort of not like our off curricular time. So evenings and weekends and sort of vacations, students will have the opportunity to go to these museums, the galleries, go to lectures at Williams College or Sarah Lawrence or Mount Holyoke or some of the other sort of big colleges around here, and use the resources of a lot of the other things that are in town. And so there's sort of an access that you get. It feels more like a big school because of that access and because of the opportunities. And because the school's been here for so long and sort of like as a fixture in the community, there's a lot of give and take with different companies and different businesses and different sort of cultural organizations. We have people come in from the professional theater companies to give presentations to future thespians in our program. We have professional artists come in and work with our students in the art classes. We have big tech. And so, GE and lots of sort of plastics manufacturers are here in the Berkshires. And so our engineering classes and physics classes will go out into the world and really see what the stuff they're learning is like in the real world. And I think a lot of that access is it's built by the community that we're in and sort of the connections we have. And then on the weekends, when you're just looking for some fun, you can go for a hike, you can jump in a kayak, you can go for a bike ride, you can sort of go. We've had students who've hiked chunks of the Appalachian Trail while they were here, or gone on long canoe trips or kayaking trips. We had a biking club, so they would do sort of mountain biking with some of our teachers, and there's just sort of there's an outdoorsy energy around here. So if that's something you're into, then there's plenty of it. And if it's not something you think you're into, you might find out that it's pretty fun. And we had chemistry teacher who used to take students out into the woods and identify trees and plant species, because it was something that he loved to do. And, the students got excited about it too. And so there's an opportunity to sort of share the sort of passions outside of the classroom, which I think is really cool. And then curricularly, I think one of the sort of unique programs that we have is our Horizons program. And Horizons is really about connecting students with the community and giving students an opportunity to do both community service, but also like business internships. So as you get older, the community service opportunities, the working in a soup kitchen, working in a school, working in a library, sort of that sort of traditional service and give back opportunity that a lot of schools have will start to morph into, I'm a junior, I'm a senior, I'm starting to think about what I want to study in college, what I want to do with my life. Maybe I want to go into running my own business. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to intern with, a local business owner and see what that's really like. I want to be a journalist, so I'm going to work at the local newspaper and see what that's really like. I want to be a politician, so I'm going to work with the local DA, or I'm going to work with the mayor, and in their office, and see what that world is really like. And it's something that we do curricularly. So it's a class that every student takes every week for 3 or 4 hours, and so you're off campus really engaging in that work. When you're younger, you're doing service and community connection. When you're older, it's an internship and really sort of business development and leadership development. And I think that's something that's unique to Miss Halls, and it's also pretty unique because of the area that we're in. We have access to 80 different kinds of organizations that students can choose from, all within about 20 minutes, because we have those connections, and because we have sort of a sprawling area that we're working with. We can do everything from a food kitchen to working with an attorney, to working with a genetic research company, to working with professional sociologists, to being a teaching assistant at a local college, all within about 10 minutes of the campus. And so there's some great opportunities for students there.
Very cool. How would you describe the community culture at Miss Halls?
I think it's tough. It's one of those things you sort of feel when you're here, and people talk about it, and it's I describe it as feeling like family. It's one of the reasons that I started working here and that I continue to work here, and why I love it is because you walk through the halls and everybody. It's a relatively small community. We've only got about 210 students. We've only got about 40 or 50 teachers, another 30 or 40 other adults, and so everybody knows everyone. People by name. You're in classes with lots of people. There's not a lot of sort of striation between, like, I only deal with the ninth graders, or I only work with it. You're in classes with people from every grade. You're on sports teams with people from every grade and every dorm, and there's people from all over the world. And it's just, after a couple of weeks, everyone just sort of feels together. There's a really strong cooperative feel. I think some of that is the opportunity for students to work well together. We have a really strong belief that the success isn't a zero-sum game. My ability to get an A doesn't mean that you have to get a B. It's everyone can get an A if we work together and support each other. And I think that sort of bleeds out of the classroom into lots of other parts of the community. And we also want to give people a chance to try things. So, maybe you've never played soccer before, but that's not going to keep you off the team. That one of the nice benefits of a relatively small school is you have the chance to try new things, and there's a spot on the team for you. There's a spot in that class that you really wanted to take. Maybe you're not, a diehard artist who's going to go to art school, but that doesn't mean you can't take the higher level, art history course, right? I mean, everything is open to everybody because of the community. And I think that sort of feels really cooperative when you're around, and it feels like family for a lot of people, which is nice.
What is a potentially surprising or little known fact about Miss Halls?
So I asked some of my colleagues about this question because I wasn't totally sure how to answer it, and I think one thing that we came back with, and I think it's definitely surprising. It's a little interesting. Is about 100 years ago, the school actually burned down to the ground completely, and the woman who started the school in 1898, she this is about 25 years after she started the school. It burned to the ground accidentally. No one was hurt, and everything was okay. But over the course of 2 months, she rebuilt it from scratch and didn't miss a beat. And so classes still happened. Students were still engaged. Teachers were still around. Everything still happened while it was being rebuilt. And it was rebuilt to the original building was built to look like and design exactly like the original building. And so it feels like we're in a building that's been around for 200 or 300 years, but but the reality is it all burned down. And I think it speaks to her sort of gumption and perseverance, that she would start this school from scratch, have it burn to the ground, and redo it over the course of a summer so that her students could be back and in session. And I think, especially right now, thinking about that history, we had to close in the spring because of the pandemic, and students went home, and it was a tough time for a lot of people. But we're bouncing back, and we're finding ways to open our doors and be safe, and give people the experience that that they've had for 125 years here. And I think that's sort of an exciting history. It's a little weird, like not a lot of schools have sort of burned to the ground, but I think so that's one sort of surprising fact that we came up with.
That is, I like that.
Yeah.
What is a favorite dining hall food?
That's a really good one. And I think, this might sound cliche, but like everybody finds something that they love. And, it's also true that you're not going to love every meal every day. That's just sort of the nature of it. We have people from everywhere. We've got, 40 different countries and 35 different languages people speak in the hallways. And there's people from here and people from far away. And so I think one of the things that our dining hall does really well is that it works with our students, and especially our cooking clubs and international clubs, to make sure that every week there's a comfort food option for all of the cultures in our community. So it might be a breakfast that the Americans are surprised by, but is really sort of homey and feels good to people from Vietnam. But or it might be something that sort of everybody seems to like chicken nuggets and mac and cheese, but if that's not your go-to, there's also lots of other options. And I think we do, and again, part of the benefit of a small place is you can really individualize and focus. And so we serve lots of dietary restrictions and lots of needs, and but we also try to make sure people are happy. It's not just about making sure that there's food that you can eat, but it's food that you want to eat. So I think that helps. I think probably the favorite meal for the general student body every year is actually when our cooking club and the dining hall staff work together. They do 2 or 3 times a year. They do like an international food festival. So there's sort of like one dish from 15 different cultures, as part of our culture fair, and we do it 2 or 3 times a year. And I think that's everyone's favorite because there's something from everywhere, and it makes everybody's got sort of a piece of home that they're eating, which is nice.
Yeah, nice. What is a favorite annual school tradition?
So some of them are top secret, and I can't tell you too much about all of them. But I think one of my favorites is a couple of days before graduation every year, the faculty take the seniors out to dinner off campus, and sort of we rent out a big restaurant and have this really nice family-style meal, where people are sitting around tables and just chatting, and everyone's grades are done, everyone's tests are done. Like it's just you got a couple of days before graduation, you're really just sort of hanging out. That's when you start to develop a different kind of relationship with the students. They start to, they're now graduates or essentially graduates. And so they're talking about their plans and dreams for the future in a different way. And I think it's really nice. And then at the end of dinner, everybody gets up in a big circle and the faculty all, we all give sort of a quote or sort of a thought about the future. Here's ascending forth, and sort of think about these words as you move on in your life. And so it's sort of a nice opportunity, a nice tradition for people to see their teachers in a different light, and to start thinking of their teachers as sort of friends and humans. And it's sort of a moment that is really sweet and poignant, I think. I have some yard work outside. Give me 2 seconds to close some windows. And
you want to, sure.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, my dog occasionally barks, so I'm trying to go on mute for that too.
Happens.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's really nice. You also definitely piqued my curiosity about the highly confidential annual school tradition. That
I mean, it's nothing spooky, but it's just I think there's some things that are nice that like this stuff is reserved for the community, and sort of once you'll figure it out, and it's fun. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Is there anything new and exciting happening at Miss Halls? I know that it's an unusual year.
I think, and I think a lot of the things we're doing this year are new and exciting. And I think the interesting thing will be what do we keep? So we have a whole new schedule we're working with this year. We have some students who won't be able to be on campus for chunks of the year. And so, we're offering a hybrid learning style. Some students will be in the classroom, some will be online. We've sort of worked the schedule so that we're doing like a block plan. So students are only going to be taking 2 classes at a time for 5-week chunks. And then they'll do 2 different classes for 5 weeks and so on throughout the year. So I think that's exciting. There may be pieces of that we hold on to after the campus can reopen fully. I think there's also a lot of schools have found that the sort of opportunity for using technology in the classroom is really high right now. There's a lot of exciting new tools that teachers are learning, and I think a lot of that will stick, right? So like even when everybody is in the classroom, there's probably more tech that we're going to be using and more opportunities to work with people from around the world. So one of the really cool things about having people scattered all over the world right now is we know that not everybody's going to be able to be in the classroom. We know that not everyone's going to be on the same time zone. So let's use opportunities outside of our community. Let's partner with my college professor from my alma mater and see if he wants to give a guest lecture to our English class. And that kind of opportunity is something that's always existed, but maybe wasn't utilized because how would you work it into the schedule? But now a lot of that stuff is really being looked at. And so I think, it's hard to say what this different stuff about this year, what's going to really stick and what's going to be true in 2, 3, 5 years. But I think there will definitely be some pieces. I think the opportunity for students to do more collaboration and more small group work, I think is going to be really important. And I think the biggest curricular change we've made in the last few years is we've actually gotten rid of our AP program, and we've replaced it with our own in-house program that we're calling Hallmark. Very high level, very advanced classes, modeled off of the college curriculum in the same way that AP was. But one thing that we found to be true and that our students found to be true about the AP program was that it wasn't really based on our educational philosophy. This was a an international organization that designed their own tests and designed their own sort of requirements, and it didn't fit the kind of learning that we thought was important and that our students found valuable when they got to college. And so we decided to jump ship, and we're going off on our own direction, using our own. The students who are in college are telling us this is what we need, this is what we want. The teachers who've taught at the college level in many cases are saying this is the kind of work that I would have done with my sophomores and juniors in college. And we're finding ways to give people the opportunity to do very high level independent research, the stuff that AP was really designed for 40 or 50 years ago, but has sort of fallen away from. And I think so that's been exciting to really sort of give teachers the opportunity to make some new ground curricularly.
Yeah, great. So who are the teachers at Miss Halls, and what types of roles do they play in student success?
There's sort of no one model of a teacher. I think we have a few teachers who were students here themselves. We have teachers who taught at the collegiate level and came to Miss Hall sort of as a second career job. We have teachers who've been here for decades. We have teachers who've been here for days. We've got teachers who live on campus and some who live off. We've got lots of little kids running around and sort of faculty families. We've got teachers who coach and teachers who work with clubs. And I mean, there's sort of no one model here. I think there's definitely a feeling that the people who are here really, really strongly believe in girls' education and think that, the opportunity for leadership development and educational opportunity, especially for young women and especially now, is really critically important to the world. And that's why they're here and that's why they're committed. But sort of the biography could be anything, but it all ends in really believing in our philosophy and our mission. I think in terms of how they help with student success, the primary role of any adult here in the community is to keep people safe and to help them move forward. So our students all have a personal team made up of teachers and coaches and advisors, and if they're a boarding student, then a resident and a whole parent, and all of the people that are by the nature of their schedule sort of assigned to that student. But then there's all of the other adults that you make connections with. And so, there were students that are not in my advising group, but they come and chat with me every day because we have some other connection. And I think those opportunities, for, people to really get to know each other and to know how to work with you, to know what's going on in the school and to know sort of how to help you navigate. I think the students will come to different adults and say, can you help me with this problem I'm having? And, instead of solving the problem for you, the teacher will work with you to find the solution for yourself. And, we're motivators rather than fixers. And I think that sort of helps develop the resilience and the leadership that the students need moving forward into their lives after Miss Halls.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Horizons program. Are there other types of programs or opportunities that you think are rather unique to Miss Halls that students are able to take advantage of?
Yeah, no, I think the two big ones right now are definitely Horizons and the new Hallmark sort of high-end curriculum. I think one of the things we're also really well known for is our arts program. So students who are particularly interested in the arts or might be, right? Like not everybody knows when they're going into ninth grade what their passion is going to be, but I think, we have a lot of students who go to some of the top art schools in the world, and the connections we have with local artists and professionals. We have students who are showing professionally while they're still in high school. We have our own gallery spaces downtown that we will host both student art, but also we have students who essentially run the gallery. And so they'll work with professional artists that have nothing to do with the school and really get a sense of the business side of art. And so I think there's sort of great opportunity there in our program. And one of the cool things about how it's designed is if let's say you're in ceramics 1, right? You've never thrown a pot before. You're going to be sitting next to a student who's in ceramics 4 and has been doing it for 2 or 3 years and is very adept. And you're going to be able to teach them things because they've been doing it a particular way for so long. They've sort of gotten lost in their own style, and you're going to show them sort of the new and excitement that comes with being brand new, and they're going to be able to help you. And so there's a lot of collaboration and student connection in the arts program, especially. And for a small school, we've got studio art, we've got painting, we've got fashion design and photography and filmmaking and art history and curation and ceramics, and like there's a significant opportunity that's just in the sort of practical arts. Then we also have performance arts. So there's music and singing and instrumentation and large bands and small bands, and there's performance on the stage. So we've got directing classes and writing classes and acting classes, and I think the arts opportunity here is pretty significant. So it's great. It's a great opportunity for students who've never been on stage or never thrown a pot or never painted, or people who've been doing it forever and really know that that's what their passion is.
How does Miss Halls balance academic rigor with support?
I think we like to challenge students as far as they can be pushed. And so we have opportunities for the very, very high flyers. We have, we have plenty of students who sort of finish the traditional high school math curriculum after a couple of years, and they'll go into either independent study courses with teachers, or they'll take college classes on the side, or they'll do online courses. We have students design their own coursework every year to sort of give themselves more challenge. There's plenty of opportunities sort of for participating in national competitions. So we have students in the sort of national science fair, or the IEEE writing competition every year, or the science bowl, or the math. So there's sort of like competitive opportunities outside of our community, and so there's sort of a lot of push and opportunity for people who really want to devote themselves academically at that level. And on the flip side, there's opportunities for students at every level, the very, very high flyers, or the ones who struggle with significant support. So we have an academic support center that's been around for more than 50 years. It's one of the oldest in the country at the high school level. And they work with students on both practical skills like note taking and how to pay attention in lecture and how to organize your homework plan, to really specific sort of subject area tutoring. So I have a test in history coming up, and I really just need some help on memorizing these dates. They'll have tools for that, sort of tactic of studying, but they'll also have ways to help you and connect with your teachers on getting the information. We have a full-time writing center to help with writing across the curriculum. They work with both teachers and students, so it's not just about sort of crafting a better essay, it's about crafting a better assignment so that students know how to write the essay. We have a math center that works with students outside of their classroom, and so it might be your teacher or it might be somebody else. And I think that's another great thing about this place is people aren't necessarily limited to the little bubble they put themselves in. So when I was a teacher full-time, I was a math teacher, but I also worked in the writing center. And, now that I'm working in admissions, I'm still working in the math center. And, there's opportunities for people to work across disciplines to help show students that there are skills you learn in one area that can be transferable. And so I think our goal is for everyone to be as successful as they can be. And for some students, that's straight A's and a 1600 on the SATs. And for other students, that's, really being able to eke out that B minus, and, putting in all of the work necessary. And we're going to work really hard with both students. And I think especially in the classroom, there's so much individualized attention that students might not even realize they're in a class in some cases. So I think about an example in our English department where you have a class of 14 students and they all have a writing assignment for the latest book, and every one of those students is writing a 3-page paper, and every one of them is writing it about the same book, but I need to work on my thesis statement. So that's the thing that I'm working with the teacher on. The person next to me, they have to work on their transitional sentences, which is a completely different skill set. And so, because they've already figured out how to make a really good thesis. And so the teacher's working really closely with them one-on-one, but in a classroom. And I think that's the model that we go with, is everyone's sort of working on the same idea, but maybe not at exactly the same goal. Everyone's being pushed, so there's no way to sort of get the easy A. That's not going to be an opportunity here. You're going to have to work for it, but it's not something that's going to be out of reach for anybody. If you're willing to work for it, and you're willing to take advantage of the resources, then there's no reason it couldn't happen. So I think it's a cool mix there.
Definitely. How does Ms. Hall support international students?
I think the 40% of our school is international and has been for almost 25 years. So it's sort of built into our DNA at this point. We have international clubs. We have which are all run by students, and sort of student opportunities. Most of our sort of student leadership, or at least a more than representative proportion, is international students. So there's international students on every sports team, in every classroom. I mean, it's just part of who we are. And I think we have dedicated staff who are sort of the international student liaison. We work with students on vacation programming and finding ways to stay connected to home. We have different sort of expectations on some of the rules because of time zone differences. So if you need to call your parents 10 minutes after lights out because that's when your parents are available, there's sort of exceptions made in those cases. And I think there's an understanding that the requirements need to be different. We're not trying to make sure that everybody here is a carbon copy of everybody else. We want people to be able to sort of hold on to their own family and cultural experience and also celebrate it. So we have opportunities throughout the year, like the culture fair I talked about with the dining hall, and with students having the opportunity to share aspects of their language and their dress and their sort of different things from home that they want to tell people about. And students teaching classes on how to do this thing. Maybe it's I think one of the most popular ones last year was one of our students from India would teach a particular kind of Indian traditional dance. And she did it 4 or 5 times a year, and it was always a full class, and people loved it. And I think those kinds of opportunities where it's more about finding ways to celebrate what you're bringing to us rather than trying to change how anybody operates. The power of having a large international community is significant, but only if you take advantage of it and give people a chance to say why having a mix of cultural experience and life experience and world experience helps, right? So we bring it into the classroom, and we, teachers work with their curriculum to make sure that we're teaching around the world. We also try really hard to make sure that we don't ask one student to speak for their entire culture ever. So my experience as sort of a white male teacher at an all-girls school is not going to be the same experience as every other male teacher, right? In the same way that the student who's from down the street is not going to be the same as every other local student, and the student from Beijing is not going to be the same as every other Chinese student. So we try really hard to make sure that we're not expecting one student to represent an entire population, because it's a lot of pressure, and it's not really fair. So we we don't do it, and I think there's a relief from stress there, from some other kinds of experiences students might have had in their past.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you have an example of a student who arrived at Miss Halls and through their time at school had a kind of a showed exceptional growth or transformation because of their experience at the school?
I mean, all of them. I think everybody experiences growth and everybody experiences transformation. I'm not being flippant. I really do think that's a genuine answer. I think some of the sort of easy examples are students who sort of came in with a passion and really pushed for 4 years on that passion, and sort of realized success at a high level coming out. We've had students who knew they wanted to be engineers, helped to spearhead a new engineering department here on campus, built a robotics club when none existed, and now are studying at MIT. And that's sort of like a really exciting model of a student who can really make things work here. But I think it's equally exciting to have the student who had never picked up a paintbrush before and took a studio art class in their freshman year because it was a requirement. They had no interest. They didn't think it was going to be fun. And they took an art class every semester from then on until they graduated because they loved it. They loved the opportunity to have free expression and the opportunity to work with those other students and to really sort of practice something. And they didn't go to art school. They still went on to do biochemistry at Brown and sort of had an exciting experience in the science lab, but had 4 years to really fall in love with drawing and painting, and now they do it on the side. So I think it doesn't have to be the thing that defines your life. It can be something that you're surprised by. I think, as a coach, I coached both soccer and softball, and a lot of the students that we get on the JV team especially are people who've never played the sport before, and by the end of the season they're on the starting squad, and the next year they're moving up to varsity. And I think that, again, like, this isn't necessarily a student who's going to go to a Division I college to play for the rest of their life, but they're finding joy in something that they've never done before. And I think that's the kind of transition moment that I really love to see. All of it is fun. It's, when I was a math teacher, it was fun to see a kid who kind of came in and loved math and still loved math when I was done teaching them. And that's fun as a teacher. But it's also fun to work with a kid who hates math, and at the end of the year they're like, okay, it's not so terrible, but I might never do it again, right? Like, that's still exciting because you moved them along on that trajectory. And so I think all of it can be exciting and all of it can be transformational. And I do genuinely believe that students who sort of take advantage of what Mills Halls has to offer will find a lot of change in their life and themselves coming out of it. So, yeah.
Great. So to kind of put the admissions hat back on, what sorts of qualities make for a candidate that you think would be a good fit for you guys?
I think for me, what I'm excited by is students who are curious and sort of looking for opportunity. The problem is that's hard to measure, right? And so I'm looking for a student who I'm looking for that student who loves engineering and wants to start every program and is going to change the world. But I'm also looking for that student who has never taken an art class before but is willing to give it a shot, right? So it's everything. Somebody who has a defined passion and knows what it is and wants to go after it, but also somebody who's open to having their mind changed. I think when I'm meeting with a family, when I'm reading through an application, when I'm interviewing, I'm really looking for a person who wants to learn more about what kinds of opportunities exist, because to me that feels like they're interested in all of the things that they could do. um, Somebody who wants to know more about clubs that exist because they're so excited about something they want to do it outside of class time. Somebody who's excited about, like, not just what am I going to take in ninth grade, but what could I take in 12th grade, and what are the different horizons opportunities, like those kinds of um, tell me more about what my life will be like. That's a student who's really looking for a life experience rather than sort of an academic experience. I think you can get an academic experience here and you can work through high school and you can graduate and be very successful and have a great time. But to really take advantage of everything this Halls has to offer, it's more than just your classes. And so if there's some way to feel that in the applicant, that's kind of what I'm looking for, which is tough because it's not, it's not a score, it's not a number, it's not a, and so I think that's what makes it a little more difficult. But yeah.
Yeah, that leads well into my next question, which is, are there particular types of indicators, and maybe you've just answered that already in some ways, that it's reading between the lines of the questions that the student or the family asks and the information that you're provided. So kind of, I mean, how do you look at a student's application with these
Yeah.
different pieces of, whether it be teacher recommendations, test scores, the other activities that they've done in the past, also in consideration of international students, which you mentioned make up a large portion of your student body, who, for example, if they attend a public school system in some countries, those schools don't necessarily integrate the extracurricular opportunities that we're very familiar with in the US. So how do you kind of take that context into consideration?
Yeah, and I think so. When we're reviewing applicants and we're looking at the sort of the whole package of the application, we definitely look very closely at the teacher recommendations. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for our committee to get a sense of what kind of student the applicant would be in the classroom. We like reading the essays and sort of hearing responses to both sort of planned questions and surprising questions. We take a look at the interview notes, but recognize that not everybody interviews comfortably, right? Not everybody is going to be able to have what feels like a natural conversation with a stranger. And so we're not going to dock you if it doesn't feel natural, but it is something we look at. We pay attention to the transcript to make sure that, you're somebody who can succeed in a traditional sort of classroom, but that's relatively low on the list of important for us. We do look at the standardized test scores, the SSAT, and again, because of the level of academic support we give, it's very rare that we would say no to a student because of a test score. But what that information gives us, if somebody has a very low or a very high test score, it might help us understand how to interpret other parts of the application. If somebody has a particularly low TOEFL score, that might indicate it would be more of a struggle for them to be successful, and we might have to figure out if this student really is right for Miss Halls. But there aren't a lot of bright red lines in our application. I mean, a lot of it really is we want students to be here who want to be here. We want to accept as many students as we possibly can. We want to give as many people the opportunity to be here as possible because we really believe that what we do is good and beneficial. And so, like, my goal as an admissions person is to help a family put together the strongest package that they can so that my committee will say yes. That's how I see my job here. And if I sort of identify something early on in the application that might bring pause to the committee, I'll try to dig into it. I'll try to get more information. Maybe the math teacher wasn't the right recommendation, and so we'll see if there's a different recommendation out there that would sort of speak to the whole student in a better way and sort of paint the picture differently. Maybe they struggled on the SSAT, and I can get more information about why. Maybe this is the first time they've ever taken a standardized test, and it just didn't feel that. So we try really hard to figure out what's going on between the lines and underneath the subtext, and to work with families to put together the strongest application possible.
Mm-hmm. And so just in particular related to testing, since a lot of the families that we work with are particularly concerned with testing, since it is a quantitative measure.
Right.
And thinking if there's particular cutoffs or what makes for a competitive test score. But as you said, it's all kind of contextualized to understand if that student never tested or took a standardized test before. But especially for an international student, you mentioned the TOEFL. I don't know if you guys are also doing any updates or considerations with your policies, especially this year with testing, or how does it factor in? And are you looking at the TOEFL? Like, do you also look at Duolingo, or are there other ways for international students to demonstrate their English proficiency, and then also with the SSAT?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I think one of the we do certainly prefer the TOEFL, and that will still be true. And partly because we just have a much larger data set of years of applicants with particular TOEFL scores and how successful they were in our program. We have started to accept the Duolingo, and it's a perfectly valid test for students to take. A person who can take the TOEFL should. That would be our preference. If for some reason you cannot take the TOEFL, we're happy to accept the Duolingo. It's not going to have a negative impact on your application. It's just sort of an easier measure for us to use when we're looking at the TOEFL because we're more used to it. We do hope that most of our applicants from China will do a Vericant interview. And so they offer the interview, they offer the SEE score, which is sort of another language scoring measure. And this year they've partnered with TOEFL, so there's the opportunity to sort of do the interview and the testing together. And then the last piece that we really like about Vericant is the essay and video. And so it's for students who haven't taken the SSAT or can't take the SSAT. It's the only opportunity we have to see sort of an essay on the fly. And that's a really useful measure for our English department. Again, it's not about sort of keeping students out or saying no. It's about making sure that when they come here, we can help them be as successful as possible. I think if we do have sort of hard cutoffs, a person applying for ninth grade with a TOEFL score under 65 is going to be somebody we're going to want to find other measures for. We need them to be successful, and there's a lot of reading. And in 10th grade, we need it to be over 75 for you. There's more time in ninth grade to sort of find that. Most of our students will come in higher than that, but not all. And we've had very successful students with relatively low TOEFLs because they just don't test well. I think the other thing about the SSAT this year is definitely going to be difficult. We're probably going to have more exemptions and waivers, especially for students from China in the SSAT. But again, we'd love to have it if you're able to take it. And you know, if your scores are particularly low in math, we may send you a placement test in math just to make sure you can handle our curriculum. And it's not gonna push you out. It's just gonna say we need to know that you can enter at a particular place, and have a better sense of our staffing and our sort of support structure, to make sure you can be successful. If you have a particularly low reading score on the SSAT, but your TOEFL scores are strong, then we're going to take that into account. And I think it's all of the objective measures are definitely part of the package, but they're of less sort of importance in our system than the sort of soft stuff, the recommendations, the essays, the interview, that kind of stuff is definitely given more weight in our final analysis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so just on that with the interview, you mentioned Veracamp for students from China. Do you typically use Veracamp as a screening mechanism and then do an interview with selected students from that, or does that serve as the whole interview?
So once a student interviews with Veracamp, they are welcome to interview again personally, either when we're in country or if they happen to come to campus or over something like Zoom or Skype. It's absolutely welcome that, and it gives sort of a bigger picture to the student. It isn't a requirement, so a person who doesn't have that time or sort of ability or money to make a trip is not going to be hurt by having only a Veracamp interview. It's really more about what kinds of questions do you have for us, and Veracamp is the interview for your application. And I welcome further conversations in whatever form from families that have questions or give me an opportunity to ask questions. But it's not going to put them at a different level, or anything like that. So.
Okay. Do you have any interview questions that you like to ask students that you feel are helpful or revealing?
I think one. There's a few. It sort of depends on how the conversation goes. Some of them, but I think one I like to ask everybody is, imagine that you were in charge of your current school. You're the principal, the head of school, the head teacher, sort of whatever that person is in your community. Imagine that you're that person. Logistics are no object, money is no object, reality is no object. What would you change about your school to make it a better place for someone like you? And and I think it's revealing because some people really take that to heart and say, here's the school that works for me. It may not work for other people, but this would work for me. There's other people who are trying to make the school better for everyone. There's other people who take the reality is no object seriously. I had a student tell me that she would put the school on the moon because she thinks it would be a really interesting opportunity for science, growth. And every answer is exciting. And I think one of the cool things about it is it tells me something about that student. It tells me something about their current experience, and it tells me something about what they're looking for. And so there's sort of a lot in that answer that gives me a window into, whether that student might be a good fit for Miss Halls. Somebody who's looking for a program that we offer, awesome. Somebody who's really excited about, opportunities that we already have built in, that's great. So I think that's a fun question because there's a lot you can unpack from the answer. But I think a lot of my questions I try to build that way. So it's not just tell me about this time in essentially like most schools are going to have sort of the standard kinds of questions. Tell me about your favorite class and why, and tell me about a time where you were really successful and what did that teach you. And And those are great questions, and I use them also. But I like the question about, if you were in charge, what would you change? Because what we're trying to build here are leaders for the future, and so I want to know where you're going to take the world.
So my final question is, what advice would you have for families and students who are embarking on the boarding school application process?
Mm. I mean, I think my sort of general advice is a little bit different this year than it would normally be, just because the opportunity for travel and exposure is significantly reduced for families, and so that's going to make it tough. I think generally my advice is look at every school you've ever heard of. Like go as deep as you can. Go to every fair that comes to your city and talk to every table. There's the 10 schools that everyone's heard of and is excited about, and they're great schools, but there's also something that your daughter is going to connect to at all of the other ones, right? And the perfect place might be one that you've never heard of. And so, like, have the opportunity to try everything, be open to ideas that might have seemed surprising. We're an all girls school, and that's not necessarily a traditional model for lots of families. And so it's not going to be the perfect environment for every applicant, but I think it's going to be a great opportunity for people who might not never have thought of it. So, generally my advice is to look at everything. Take your time with it, right? Start, if you're looking for ninth grade, start, same thing we tell our high school students, right? When they're looking for college, we start our college process in 10th and 11th grade. We don't want all of the stress of that to happen only in the fall of your last year. That it can be a really stressful experience. So start looking in seventh grade and start thinking about it, start putting your list together. If you can travel, it's nice to, but there's so much available on the web these days that you don't have to think of that as the only option. And I think there's so many schools that are traveling to you and want to talk to excited families. And so, working with an organization like yours, like keep your ears open for what kinds of opportunities exist, and watch these videos, look at the websites, really do more broad research than you thought you would, to find the kind of program that really fits what you and your daughter are looking for, because it might surprise you. Maybe it will be the school you always imagined, but maybe it won't be. And I think that can be exciting. Some of the people who end up here, it was not the first school on their list, and they couldn't be happier, right? In the same way when you go to college, right? Like, you have your list, you have your dream school, you might end up there, you might end up somewhere else, and maybe you'll transfer, maybe it won't be the perfect fit, maybe you'll stay and it turns out it was better than your dream school. And I think sort of being open to that kind of opportunity, I think, is a big piece of it. So yeah, I think my advice, like, the process will feel different this year, but my advice is definitely to cast a wide net and to take your time with it. Try not to stress out, because there will be a great option for you and your family at the end of the road.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much, James. This was
Yeah.
very helpful to learn more about Ms. Hall's,
Yeah.
and your own educational philosophy too. So
Yeah.
look forward to sharing Ms. Hall's.
Opportunity.
Yeah. We look forward to sharing Ms. Hall's with our families. So.
Excellent.